Yo, what's going on everyone? Brian and Jim here with DrinkABeerandPlayAGame, and today we're checking out Super Castlevania 4 for the Super NES. I gotta confess, this is probably my favorite 16-bit game. Let's get into it.
Released in 1991, this was developed and published once again by Konami. This is kind of a remake, reboot, sequel of sorts? I don't know. The whole backstory is kind of weird. I'm not as good at that as Brian is, but it's a damn fine game. It's one of the most beloved 16-bit games of all time, and widely considered to be the best Castlevania game of all time next to Symphony of the Night. But that's his own little can of worms. Anyway, let's see if it's worth the hype.
Graphically, this game is as impressive as shit. The amount of objects in the foreground, background, the amount of scaling, there's just so much going on, and I feel like this is one of the best examples of why the Super NES was so much better than the Genesis.
Right.
Yes?
1, fuck you. 2, you forgot to mention Mode 7.
Yeah, Mode 7. So anyway...
Brian, you didn't mention the goddamn Mode 7. How it makes the whole goddamn level rotate around you goddamn third levels. Ah!
Yes, as I'm trying to kind of get to, one of the things the Super NES could do...
Didn't get to it fast enough.
...that the Genesis couldn't do, and Jim is still butthurt about it.
We had blast processing.
He's still butthurt about it. Look at this room. Look at how it rotates. That is just impressive as shit. But let's put all that technical bullshit aside. Just look at this game. The amount of details going on in every stage is really crazy. Things like leaves moving, little bats flying out of skulls. The game has a level of depth that not many games of this era really had. And, of course, all the monsters have an amazing amount of detail, and Simon actually looks really good this time. I could go on and on about the color variation, the this, the that, but the game speaks for itself. And as far as graphics, I gave it a 10, Jim gave it a 9. I honestly can't really think of a game that looks much better on the Super NES, so I'm not even going to add a beer for this.
The sound. Once again, this is one of those legendary soundtracks. I'm not going to say it's quite as memorable on its own, but it's still so well made, so well produced. It uses that reverb that the Super NES is known for to its fullest. The music's just really orchestral and gothic-y. But towards the end of the game, you also get all those nice little throwbacks to the first 3 Castlevanias. So there's just so much here for old and new for fans. The sound effects, once again, they get the job done. They're perfectly fine.
Use a different term!
They are acceptable and adequate.
That's better.
Yeah. See? I can English good.
Damn it!
Anyway, it's just a great overall sound package. It's moody, it gets you pumped up, and it just fits. So, we both gave it 9s. You don't need any beers. It's almost perfect as is.
Well, obviously the presentation increased from the previous Castlevania, but the most important improvement over the previous titles, the control. Holy shit. It's no secret we're fans of the Angry Video Game Nerd, and he put it best that you truly feel like you're in control of Simon Belmont. The fact that you can whip in every direction, if you hold down the attack button and you kind of move it, you can wiggle the whip, and that actually comes in handy in some parts. When you're moving up and down steps, it does it automatically, so it takes those automatic bullshit drops out of the way. You can do a duck walk, you can hang from things with your whip. There's just really no limit, and the best part is this is a game that I say utilizes the full potential of the Super NES controller, because you use the R trigger to actually throw all your special weapons. Makes a huge difference as you're playing through this game. Other than that, it is still a very simplistic game, and it does still have that one unfortunate fact of the bounce back. But the jumps, even if they are a little tight, honestly, there's only about 2 areas in the game where I think it's a little unfair. If you fuck up in this game, it is really on you. The control is not an issue. So we both gave it 9s, and it's only because some of those jumps, as I previously mentioned, they were a little rough. As far as beers, I'm gonna add 1 for that damn bounce back.
The gameplay. Take everything the first Castlevania did, give it a lot of polish and tweaking, and you have this.
Jim, would you say make it super?
Super 64? Ow.
Nobody likes a 64!
Yeah.
Keep moving, cuck.
Anyway, The things this game did right. For once, it's the first game where once you start your jump, you can actually kind of control yourself in midair. The bounce back, while it's still unfortunately goddamn here, it's not really as bad as it's been before. It's actually a game where you enjoy platforming, unlike the other one where it's a goddamn chore. The level design is just so much more varied between the water slide levels or the gold levels or just the pure scale of everything. Not to mention the fact that there's so many more and varied boss battles. And like we mentioned before, the scaling and rotation effects that you can do in levels that kind of almost turn it on its head, one could say.
I'd say disorient you.
So much for that. Anyway, it does all those things really well, and it adds it onto that core Castlevania gameplay that you just love so much. Well, besides the fact you can finally whip in every direction, which is awesome!
I already said that!
Oh, I know, but it needs to be said again. It makes such a difference. So, we've said it before, it's one of the best in its genre, especially for the time. So Brad gave it a 10, and I gave it a 9. Why a 9? Because the bounce back's still there. That's why. Man.
He's a bitch.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I'll just add one beer, because I get hit a lot, and I need the beer to wash away the pain.
Unfortunately, like with most remakes, there's not a lot of points here for originality. Sure, they allowed you all the mechanics we mentioned in the control, which kinda does make it feel like a new game. But other than that, it's still just a side-scrolling platformer where you're killing a bunch of monsters. The story is pretty much identical to the first game. The power-ups are pretty much identical, so really all you have is the control mechanics being updated. The last thing I'll say before I show you our scores is, they did expand with a few more additional types of creatures in this game, but like I said, that is just a tradition at this point with all the Castlevania games going forward, so we really couldn't give it points for that either. As you see from the scores, I gave it a 5, Jim gave it a 4. I really respect the fact that, just from a control standpoint, if you compare this to the original Castlevania, it would feel like two different games. And as far as beer, I'll add 1, because although I enjoy the simplicity of this game, I would have liked to seen maybe a few additional characters like they had in Castlevania 3, but who cares, it's still friggin' awesome.
So the replayability. Like the other early games in the series, there's not really that much technically here, but there is more than we've seen before to this point. Mainly in the fact that, 1, the game's just, maybe it's us being objective here, or not objective. Yeah, not objective, that's the word.
Learn how to talk, cuck!
But really, we just find this to be the most fun out of them, so this is probably the one that we would choose to go back to the most, especially since some of the major control issues have been fixed. But besides that, while there aren't true branching paths in this game, you can choose how you want to go through the levels. There are different pathways in each major level, so there's that. And it gives you a reason to come back and maybe try out the ones you didn't do before. I don't know, we might be grasping at straws here, but Brad gave it a 6 and I gave it a 5. And as far as beer goes, I'll just add one more beer for the somewhat branching paths.
Overall, this is a game I enjoy so much, it's one of my traditions that every year I go back through and play it. Even though I've seen that same ending screen time and time again, I'll never get tired of playing. And yeah, it's still got that classic Castlevania difficulty, but like I said before, you feel like you're better equipped to deal with all those goddamn challenges, those jumps, and just the sheer number of bosses you're gonna fight in this title. After this game, with the exception of Castlevania X, the majority of titles would switch over to that Metroidvania style because of Castlevania Symphony of the Night. Whether that's the best style or not is really debatable, but from just a simplistic sit-down, play a horror-packed hack-and-slash 2D side-scrolling platformer, you're not going to get much better than this. And like I said, this is my favorite 16-bit game. So, when it comes to scores, we both gave it a 10. This is probably the only game that I can think of that we gave a 10. We both love it so much. The presentation's perfect, the control is crisp, and the gameplay will keep you coming back time and time again. When we combined all of our scores together, rounds out to a 9. This is definitely one of the highest scores we've given a game, and even with all the praise we give in this game, as you see from our score, it's really tough to get high from us, just because that's the way we restrict ourselves, because we're not all willy-nilly about giving out 10s all the time.
Yeah, IGN, what now?
So, can't stress it enough, I know it's balls expensive, So first, just emulate the game, and if you enjoy as much as I do, it's going to be worth your time to go out and buy it. But like I said, it's an expensive sumbitch, so good luck. When it comes to beer pairing, I have to go with a beer that's going to offer a ton of flavor and help you get drunk fairly fast. So I'm going with the Neshaminy Creek Imperial Chocolate Mudbank Milk Stout. This is a delicious milk stout that has just enough chocolate flavor, and you get some of those oats, some caramel. There's just a lot going on, just like this game. So pair these two together and I guarantee you'll have a good time. But remember to drink your beers and play your games responsibly. As always, guys, thanks for checking out this video, and if you enjoyed it, make sure you give us a thumbs up, leave some comments, or better yet, why not subscribe? Till next time, guys, cheers.